Nobody tells you this at the beginning, because the truth is bad for business. The world does not make money from people becoming wealthy, it makes money from people looking like they're on the way. That's the trick. Most people don't stay broke because they're lazy. They stay broke because they accidentally adopt habits that make them excellent employees, excellent consumers, excellent borrowers, excellent explainers of why this month was unusual, but not wealthy. Wealth requires behaviors that look antisocial to the normal economy. A lot of them are boring. Some of them are harsh, a few make you feel like a terrible participant in modern life, and almost none of them get applause early. That's why I call them brutal money habits, not because they're flashy, because they cut against the grain. They offend the part of you that wants comfort, status, permission, and instant relief. They also expose how the system actually works behind the curtain. When I had nothing, I thought wealth was mostly about making more money. That is the story everybody sells, because it's clean and motivational and easy to post over stock footage of skyscrapers. It's also incomplete. Making money matters, but wealth is built by how you behave when money touches your hands. That's where the real sorting happens, not at the level of ambition, at the level of reflex. So these are the habits that changed everything for me. Not cute little budgeting tips, not wake up at 5 a.m. theater. I mean the underlying behaviors that quietly move someone from zero toward actual wealth while everyone else is still performing financial progress in public. The first one was learning to treat income like a temporary event and assets like the real objective. This sounds obvious until you watch how most people operate. They don't actually chase wealth. They chase the feeling of being paid. They optimize for the emotional high of incoming cash, not the structural stability of owned things. That's why people can double their income and still remain financially soft. Salary goes up, apartment goes up, car goes up, standards go up, pressure goes up. The entire raise gets redirected into maintaining a more expensive identity. From the outside, it looks like progress. From the inside, nothing fundamental has changed. They still need next month to go right. Wealthy people and broke people can earn the same amount of money and live in different universes because one is converting income into ownership and the other is converting income into lifestyle. That was a brutal realization. I had to stop celebrating income like it was victory. Income is not victory. Income is raw material. If it doesn't become equity, cash reserves, productive investments, a business, ownership of anything that remains after the month is over, then it was just expensive oxygen. The second habit was becoming aggressively hard to impress. This one is more important than people think, because entire industries are built around your desire to be seen correctly by strangers. Luxury doesn't just sell products, it sells emotional shortcuts. It sells relief from insecurity. It sells a costume that makes you feel like you've already become the person you're trying to become. And if you're not careful, you start renting your self-image at interest rates hidden inside everyday choices. That's why so many smart people stay financially average for decades. They are not buying objects. They are buying identity reinforcement, a nicer watch because they're finally doing well, a more expensive building because they deserve better, a newer car because it's more reliable, which sometimes means more reliable at proving something, a constant stream of low-grade status purchases that look harmless individually and lethal collectively. Behind the scenes, the economy loves this version of you. The insecure achiever is one of the most profitable human types in existence. Wealth building requires emotional resistance to that machine. I had to learn to let other people underestimate me, to walk into rooms without visually announcing my progress, to stop needing my purchases to speak on my behalf. That is harder than it sounds, because status spending is often disguised as self-respect. Sometimes it isn't self-respect. Sometimes it's just panic in a tailored jacket. The third habit was keeping my fixed costs brutally low for far longer than my ego wanted. This is where a lot of financial journeys die, because as soon as people start earning more, they rush to lock in permanent monthly obligations. And permanent obligations are how temporary success becomes permanent stress. The dangerous purchases are not the obviously stupid ones. The dangerous purchases are the ones that turn your future into a subscription, a slightly nicer apartment, a car payment that feels manageable, furniture financed because it's only a few hundred a month, a neighborhood chosen to match who you think you're becoming, a social circle whose default spending silently sets your floor higher every quarter. Now you don't just need income, you need continuity, you need the machine to keep feeding, you need every month to cooperate. That dependency kills risk tolerance. And risk tolerance, when intelligently used, is one of the few real advantages normal people have on the road to wealth. If your baseline expenses are low, you can take opportunities other people can't. You can leave bad jobs faster. You can survive inconsistent income. You can put time into skills, side businesses, investments, or strategic pivots without immediately collapsing. People think low expenses are about frugality. Not really, they're about keeping your options alive. The fourth habit was refusing to upgrade my life every time I got proof that I could. This is where the psychology gets ugly, because earning more money doesn't just increase your spending power. It increases the internal pressure to finally reward yourself for all the years you felt behind, overlooked, stressed, disciplined, embarrassed, hungry, or deprived. That's why lifestyle inflation is so emotional. It's rarely about the item itself. It's about compensation. People aren't saying, "I need this." They're saying, "After everything I've dealt with, I should be allowed this." And maybe they should. The problem is that the market has figured that out. It knows exactly how to weaponize your exhaustion. It knows when you're most likely to spend emotionally. Right after the promotion. Right after the breakup. Right after the first big month. Right after the season where you prove to yourself you're not a failure. That's when people make financial decisions that feel like healing and function like anchors. So I built a brutal rule. Improvements had to lag income. Deliberately, not forever. I'm not romanticizing deprivation, but I refuse to let a good season immediately rewrite my cost structure. I wanted time to expose whether the increase was real, repeatable, and worth integrating. That delay created space, and space became capital. The fifth habit was treating debt like a strategic instrument at best and a predator at worst. The public conversation around debt is weirdly dishonest. On one side, you have people saying all debt is evil. On the other side, you have a culture that normalizes financing almost everything short of a sandwich. The real issue is power. Debt is not just a number, it is a claim on your future behavior. It reduces optionality. It narrows your moves. It makes your next decision less free than it looks. Now, yes, some debt can be useful. Productive debt tied to appreciating assets or cash-flowing opportunities can be intelligent. But most consumer debt is not helping people build wealth, it is helping them pre-spend it. That distinction matters. When I had nothing, I started seeing debt not as money I had accessed, but as freedom I had sold. That changed my entire posture. Every dollar of debt meant a version of me in the future had fewer choices and more pressure. That future version was going to wake up inside commitments I created for emotional reasons in the present. That's a nasty inheritance to leave yourself. So I became extremely conservative about borrowing for anything that did not clearly improve my long-term position. Not my mood, not my image, my position. That one habit alone protects people from years of hidden fragility. The sixth habit was learning how rich people actually buy time. Most people think buying time means taking vacations or hiring help once you're already wealthy. That's the surface-level version. The deeper version is understanding that time becomes wealth when it is redirected into high-leverage activity. Poor and middle-income people are often taught to save money by doing everything themselves forever. Wealthy people understand a more useful question. What should I personally still be doing, and what should be removed from my plate because it steals energy from more valuable work? This is not about becoming lazy. It's about understanding bottlenecks. If an hour of your focused energy can create $500 worth of value, but you spend that hour doing a $20 task to feel efficient, you are not being disciplined. You are misallocating your life. Early on, this might mean using software, templates, or systems to automate repetitive work. Later, it might mean paying for bookkeeping, editing, cleaning, delivery, admin help, or anything else that protects the hours where your brain actually produces income or assets. The reason this matters is that wealth rarely comes from effort alone. It comes from directed effort, from protecting the few activities that change your financial trajectory and minimizing the rest. The world quietly trains you to confuse busyness with virtue. Wealth punishes that confusion. The seventh habit was making financial decisions based on downside survival, not upside fantasy. This is one of the least glamorous habits and one of the most life-changing. Most bad money decisions begin with a story. If everything goes right, this will work. If this next quarter hits, I'll be fine. If I keep getting clients at this pace, the payment is easy. If the market grows like it has been, I'm good. That's not planning, that's flirting with your own future. Behind the scenes, banks, landlords, lenders, and sellers love optimistic buyers. Entire sales systems are designed around monthly affordability under ideal conditions, not resilient conditions. Ideal conditions. Wealth is built by reversing that lens. I started asking different questions. If revenue drops, can this still survive? If I get tired, sick, distracted, unlucky, or slower than expected, does this decision still hold? If this goes wrong publicly, privately, emotionally, can I absorb it? That mindset makes you look overly cautious right before it makes you look unusually stable. And stability compounds, because every time you survive a downturn without panic, you protect capital, attention, and self-trust. Every time someone else gets wiped out by a decision that required perfection, you quietly move forward simply because your life was built to handle reality. The eighth habit was becoming obsessed with concentration before diversification. People love to say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Sounds wise, sounds mature. Often terrible advice for someone starting from zero. If you have no meaningful capital, your real problem is not overconcentration. Your real problem is irrelevance. You do not have enough force anywhere. Early wealth is usually built by focusing intensely on one or two things that actually move the needle. One skill, one business, one career edge, one scalable asset, one serious income engine that you understand deeply enough to push hard. Diversification matters later, once there is something meaningful to protect. But too many people diversify themselves into mediocrity before they've built any real power. They have 7 half-starts, 3 underfunded ideas, 4 platforms, 6 income streams that barely deserve the name, and no concentrated advantage. That's not strategy, that's avoidance disguised as sophistication. I had to learn to go all the way in on a few things with real asymmetric upside. To tolerate boredom, to tolerate repetition, to tolerate not looking interesting while something was compounding underneath. Wealth often grows in narrow channels first. People just don't talk about that because focus looks less glamorous than variety. The ninth habit was separating private net worth from public performance. This is a dangerous one because we live in a culture where image updates faster than reality. People signal success long before they have secured it. They create a visible life that outpaces the invisible foundation underneath it. That creates pressure in both directions. First, you start spending to remain consistent with the persona you've projected. Second, other people start responding to your image instead of your actual financial position. You get invited into more expensive norms, more expensive environments, more expensive expectations. Suddenly, your social world is billing you for a character you invented too early. Real wealth hates that. Real wealth grows best in private, quietly, before announcement, before branding, before the house tour, the car reveal, the celebratory narrative about how far you've come. I learned to keep the scoreboard inside, to let net worth grow in the dark, to resist broadcasting progress before it became durable. There is enormous strategic advantage in being less visibly successful than you are, especially while you're still building. When you do that, you move with less social pressure, less envy, less expectation, and less temptation to make symbolic purchases for narrative continuity. In other words, you stay dangerous. The 10th habit was choosing environments that made discipline easier and delusion harder. This might be the most underrated one of all, because people think money habits live inside the individual. They don't. They live inside systems. Your city affects your spending. Your friends affect your standards. Your workplace affects your sense of what income is normal. Your algorithm affects what feels necessary. Your neighborhood affects what looks embarrassing. Your industry affects what kind of financial stupidity gets framed as ambition. People say, just have self-control. Fine. But self-control is easier in an environment that doesn't attack it all day. So I got more deliberate about where I spent time, who I listened to, what lifestyles I normalized, what conversations I let shape my expectations. I paid attention to whether an environment rewarded substance or performance, patience or urgency, ownership or display. That matters because wealth is not only a result of choices, it is a result of what choices feel available, what behaviors feel normal, and what lies are socially reinforced around you. Put differently, if everyone around you is overextended, your caution feels paranoid. If everyone around you is quietly building, your restraint feels intelligent. One environment turns discipline into deprivation. Another turns it into identity. That difference can alter your finances for a decade. And here's the deeper truth underneath all 10 habits. None of them made me feel rich at first. That's the part no one markets. These habits often make you feel behind before they make you powerful. They make you look less successful than people who are financially weaker than you. They delay emotional rewards. They force you to say no when yes would feel better. They ask you to become someone who can tolerate being misunderstood. That is why so few people stick with them. Because in the short term, the market rewards performance, wealth rewards structure, performance gets the compliments, structure gets the freedom, performance gets seen, structure survives, performance gets financed, structure gets owned. If you understand that, a lot of the noise falls away. You stop asking, how do I look like I'm winning? And start asking, what quietly increases my control over my future? That is a much more dangerous question. Dangerous in the best way, because once you start thinking like that, you begin to notice how many normal money behaviors are actually traps with good branding. You notice how often convenience is just a recurring payment, how often reward is just rationalized inflation, how often flexibility is sold by the very systems that profit when you have none. How often modern life tries to convert your ambition into overhead before it can become wealth. And that's really what changed my LF, not motivation, not hustle slogans, not one giant break. I just started seeing the machine more clearly. I saw that banks want predictable dependence, brands want emotional spending, employers often benefit from workers who need the paycheck too badly to negotiate. Platforms want you comparing your real balance sheet to someone else's rented image. And the average person, without realizing it, gets trained to cooperate with all of it. Wealth required me to become a less cooperative version of myself, calmer, less performative, harder to tempt, harder to rush, more willing to let the outside world misread what season I was in. That is what these habits really did. They didn't make me feel rich. They made me harder to control. And if you pay attention, that's what actual wealth looks like before the world has a name for it.